From the Constituency's back. Hello, everybody. I'm Brian Calfano, and joined again by Charles Dahan from Washington, D.C. Had to bring you in on this one because, Charlie, you are, of the two of us, an expert about credit scores. The bane of my existence, by the way. These scores, which range from what, like 300 to 850 or something, are supposed to basically tell lenders how much of a risk you are for what, like defaulting on a loan or something along those lines?
Yeah, generally your worthiness to be loaned money.
All right, well, here's the problem.
Yeah.
These three reporting score companies, whatever you want to call them, TransUnion, Equifax, and what's the other one?
Experian would be the third.
So they've got these scores, but the scores aren't the same across the three bureaus. And I discovered this because I've got one of those monitoring services, and I've got all different scores. Now, they don't go from like 500 to 750. I mean, I've got allegedly excellent credit from two of them, and I only have very good from one of them.
Well, that's great for you.
Well, but I want to know why I'm only very good on one of them. And, you know, there's several dozen point difference between the top score for one of these organizations and then the very good score. And I have a feeling that lenders would just go for the lowest score of the three and say that's your credit worthiness.
You're absolutely right. Credit scores go from 300 to 850, and the biggest factors that go into calculating your credit score are pretty obvious, right? The recency of default, so that means your payment history, and particularly your payments that may be more than 90 days late. That's when you're considered in default, as well as the amount of credit that you're utilizing in any particular time or how leveraged you are as an individual.
Right, but here's the deal. What if the information's wrong?
Right.
Now, so here's the deal. I've got some alleged collection going on. Some jabroni said somewhere that I owed money that I didn't pay.
What?
And it's not true.
Yeah.
And so I have one of those credit monitoring services. I won't say which one. But I emailed them yesterday because the credit score, the lowest credit score, has that default tick on it saying that I've defaulted. The other two don't. And that's probably why they're higher in terms of up to 850 or whatever. So I send an email and I say, hey, whoa, you know, this is not good. This isn't true. And I get this email back. It says, Dear Brian, thank you for contacting blah, blah, blah regarding the drop in your credit score. I can certainly understand your concern. Unfortunately, blah, blah, blah is not a credit repair service and is unable to advise you as to the reason for any credit score drop. The best thing to do in this situation is to review your most recent credit reports for any inaccuracies or fraudulent accounts. Well, I did that. That's why I contacted these idiots. Right. If you find a fraudulent account, please call our member services department immediately so we may determine the appropriate course of action. There are many different situations that can affect your credit score, as you just pointed out, including credit bureau errors, high balances, too many credit inquiries, or even paying off debts due to this decreasing the number of open debt accounts you hold. All of these issues can negatively impact your credit worthiness, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so I think I've got a credit bureau error, and this monitoring service is saying, we only really care about fraudulent accounts. So I've got an error from these people, and by the way, this isn't like Moses talking to God. Where do these credit bureaus get this information, and how do we know it's actually true?
So let's talk about the Equifax breach, because I think it gives you a good example of where these folks get their information
this
from.
This was about, what, a year and a half ago, this breach?
A little more than that, yeah, but basically they didn't secure their database properly, right? The fines, I don't think, were in any way commiserate with the level of damage they did to Americans. But basically they suck up and call all financial information from every American, right? And not just the United States. These are global entities, and credit scores are in every country that I'm aware of, right? And they suck up every financial transaction, every credit card you've ever opened, right? Mortgages, leases, payments on time, right? Now they're encouraging people to upload their utility bills, right? Claiming that it'll improve your credit score, but really it's just another way of them getting more information on every American, right? And they're not securing it properly. Additionally, there's a lot of research that shows that these credit scores don't actually tell creditors all that much, right? There obviously are broad ranges, right? If you're at the very bottom end, if your credit score is somewhere in the 400s, right, you probably are a riskier loan recipient than someone that's at the very top, right? But that's for pretty obvious reasons, right? You've defaulted recently. But the way in which these scores are calculated they claim to be proprietary, right? So you don't get to see that. There isn't an easy way to repair the score.
There is not an easy way.
There isn't, right? You have to contact these agencies, and it's up to them. So there isn't a clear and obvious way to ever repair any of your credit scores, right? And these have dramatic effects on individuals' lives.
Yeah, I mean.
Right.
Actually, even for me, it just makes me feel ticked off at this point. I mean, I haven't been able not to get a good line of credit and interest on my yacht purchase, but it's been
sure.
Yeah. But I just look at these things
for the Lake of the Ozarks, your yacht for the lake.
That's it. And so the deal is, there are people out there who really have problems with this. I mean, I'm being tongue in cheek, but there are real problems out there with people.
No,
yeah?
of course there are real problems. And let me tell you, the biggest problem is that now employers are using credit scores for employment verification, which is horrendous. So nearly 50%, last number I saw, it's probably above that now, but about 50% of all employment background checks include credit checks. Now, this makes sense here in D.C. if you're applying for a job in which poor financial history or high levels of debt may be used against you. So,
like for blackmail,
for example,
State Department
right?
job you want, right?
State Department job, FBI, right? Those make sense. To get a normal job like the rest of us, right? To go and be a high school teacher, your credit background check is pulled and can affect whether or not you get a job. But let's think about the stuff that goes into credit checks, or into your credit score rather, right? If you have an unforeseen illness, just because somebody got sick, now not only are they heavily in debt, which is a pretty unique thing for a first world country to the U.S., right? But also now they're going to have trouble getting a job to be able to pay off that debt just because they got sick. And that's the biggest problem with these credit scores, right? They're overused. People think when they see a number, because I think we sort of fetishize metrics or numbers or statistics or anything like that. They think it has some sort of validity to it, and it does in broad swaths, broad ranges, right? But the difference between someone with a 660 score and a 680 score, and 670 for a lot of credit is sort of that tipping point, is nonsensical, right? It is totally meaningless. And yet companies, employers, and really all of American society has started to look at these credit scores as if they have some sort of serious validity. Not only don't they have much validity, but these creditors and credit agencies aren't even safeguarding the information that they've sucked up well, and they're allowing for God knows who to go and be able to get that data and information without any of our consent, right? None of us consented to allow Equifax or any of the other agencies to have any of this economic data, and let alone sell that data, which is exactly what they're doing. So they're making a profit off of our financial history that may not even be correct, that then is going to affect our employment history or employment future.
And then you wonder, why don't the politicians do something about this? This would actually be useful.
It absolutely would, right? And so during the last financial crisis, the best thing that we have is that you get one free credit check a year. So thanks. And that really was the outcome of it. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous as to what's going on. And if you want to talk about problems with politics that directly affect your life on a daily basis, credit scores, even though they may not be the most interesting, and I would say they're not interesting by design, right? These companies have intentionally made the formula, what goes into it, they made all these variables very opaque intentionally to keep you from being able to really know what's going on, and then they've also allowed it to have this veneer of validity.
My favorite is when you pay off debt.
Yeah. Oh, this is great.
The score could go down.
Right.
In other words,
right.
You have been responsible.
Right.
And even though you've done what you're supposed to do per the terms of the loan,
right,
and you haven't been in default, the score could go down because now you don't have as many open loans.
Or closing a credit card.
Yeah.
You close a credit card and somehow, because I don't want to have this card, maybe it has an annual fee, maybe I just don't like the company, right? Maybe I've had a bad experience with American Express or Visa or whomever. I just didn't like the card, and I close it, my credit score goes down. Now, they have a reason, which is that they want your cards to be open longer. Well, that makes sense, right? And they want you to have a higher amount of available credit.
But the banks themselves or the credit card issuer may close the account because you don't use it. I've had that happen. I've just opened accounts because I wanted to get some perk, because all these cards now come with perks, right? But I'm not Rockefeller, contrary to popular beliefs. I just can't max out.
You only have one yacht on the
I only have one right now, and it's enough for me. I'm a humble person. Anyway, the point is that I can't keep all these cards going. So the banks have unilaterally come to me and said, well, we're going to close this one because we don't see any activity on it. And you've got these others with thousands of dollars of credit that you're using regularly, because I happen to like those cards and those perks more, so I use those cards more. Well, I don't have any control over that. They've decided on their own to close the thing.
Exactly, right? And your credit score is going to be hit for no reason, right, that makes any economic sense. So, I mean, I feel as though we're just sort of complaining about all of this.
Well, we are. That's why we have podcasts. That's what podcasts are about. If we had any power, we would sign something and make it change.
Right. But this is one of those issues that's really, really, really difficult to have any resolution of. So what should people do? You should attempt to use credit as responsibly as possible, and then be very leery of credit cards to begin with, right? Or credit offers in general. Not only are these attempts by banks or lenders or credit card companies or agencies, right, to get you to use a card, what that's going to end up doing is, with the interest rate that's astronomical on these credit cards, right, 20% up to 30% on American Express, right? If you're buying something today for $100, you're not going to pay it off for a year. Really, you're spending $120, $130 on that item, just due to the interest that's also compounding over time. So that's the first big issue. Second, monitor your credit, right? So check in on it on a regular basis without any regulatory change.
Check in on it so you can see all the things that they're doing wrong and not do anything about it because they don't have any recourse, or you don't have any recourse.
You can look, the best you can do in a bad situation like you're in now with these folks is contact, right? And
how filing for bankruptcy. Yeah, but so contact them.
I mean, that's the most, and continually. You can lock your credit, right? So that no new agency, whether it's legitimate or illegitimate, can take out a loan in your name using your Social Security number and your information. So locking your credit is always a good idea. But really, attempting to use credit as little as possible is the best way to try and deal with this. So that then when you actually do need something, right, you need a car loan, you need a loan for an emergency, like or a medical emergency, you want to get a mortgage, any of these sorts of things, you haven't affected your credit that much, right? So those are the things we can do immediately. What can we do long term? I think people really need to realize that these credit scores are largely made up, right? The variables that go into them don't really matter, right, or affect anything. And at most, you have ranges of credit scores, right, rather than any individual number, right, that is particularly important. But no, this is a huge problem. I think it's one of the problems that is most under discussed but affects people the most. and it's really an important issue.
What's amazing too is it appears that the mafia had it right the whole time. Everything's in cash.
Listen, paying in cash isn't a bad issue, but the mafia certainly does. I've heard extend credit to people that may not be able to get it otherwise, and then you're really in some trouble.
That's the next topic. What happens when the credit score really tanks and you got to go to a loan shark? Anyway, all right. Well, hey, listen, this has been enlightening, and I'll keep you posted on what happens with my little issue there. But
I appreciate it. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Great talking to you.
Yeah, same here. Thanks.